Well, today's Canada has become increasingly more secular, with religion and faith issues falling to the wayside as being of minor importance. Our guest today believes one way of bringing about some change to this is for the church to become more involved in our communities. Kelly Stickel joins us. He is the lead pastor of My Victory in Lethbridge. Pastor Kelly, welcome. So great to have you back on again.
Thanks, Jeanette. It's great to be with you.
Awesome. So, Pastor Kelly, times have changed. Obviously, 100 years ago or so, the local church used to be the community hub, that community gathering hub, so to speak. Not so much these days. So, do you think that people who don't regularly attend church tend to drive by a church building and maybe see it as a them versus us mentality? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know that a lot of people driving by a church building pay all that much attention to the church building. I think more than them thinking us versus them, I think they're probably just thinking irrelevant. Like it's not relevant to them. It's not relevant in society. And if anything, lately with all the stuff that's come out, residential schools and all the other things in the media, they're probably looking, saying like, not only are we irrelevant as the church, but also they look at as even a negativity aspect to the community. And so that's something that I think is alarming, is something that we need to be very aware of as those of us in the church and do something about it.
Yeah, you raise a very interesting point there. Now, I understand that some churches are now trying to restore that community feeling by doing things like setting up a laundromat at the church for anyone to come by and use at no charge. I know there's a church in Calgary that's opened up a coffee shop there. They're just trying to be more inclusive, I think, to the community as well. So basically trying to meet some practical needs for the neighborhood. I really love this idea. So how effective do you think this is?
I think it's really effective. I think that we as the church need to realize that we're expecting people just to walk through the door when they're, and address their spiritual needs is not something that is likely to happen. That there's a lot of other things that we need to think about, and I think we need to take our cue from how Jesus did ministry. When Jesus showed up in towns, he healed the sick, he fed the hungry, he ministered to felt needs often before he ever preached. And I think in many ways, I think that as the church, we need to realize that, hey, we're not just a church is not just a place we attend, it's who we are. And if we want to have an impact in our community, we need to be the hands and feet of Jesus to our cities.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you tell us a bit about your church reaching out to the community through the My City Care program?
Yeah, a number of years ago, I preached a message, through a series actually through December, and I preached through Matthew 25, where Jesus said, "When I was hungry, you fed me; when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink; when I was naked, you clothed me; when I was in prison, you visited me." And in that passage, he listed, six human needs that are surprisingly 2,000 years later are still the six most predominant human needs in our society, being food and water, clothing, housing, healthcare, justice. These are the six, still the six greatest needs in our community. And I challenged our church and I said, Jesus wasn't addressing the Red Cross to meet all these needs. He wasn't addressing the government to meet all these needs. He was addressing his followers. He was addressing us as the church. And what would happen? Just pose the question, what would happen if we as a church took on these six needs and said, okay, we're going to become the center of hope. We're going to meet these six needs in our community. What would change? And I think COVID revealed a lot of things where I think a lot of our society is looking to the government to meet their needs, and are being let down because that's not the government's job. And we've relegated, I think, our job as the church to the government, to the Red Cross, to other organizations, where I think it's time to take our job back. And so I really challenged our church, let's take our job back. Let's find the needs in our community, identify those six needs, and what can we do to meet them? And out of that, a number of people in our church, spearheaded by, Jen Tribble, who's the head of our My City Care, we birthed My City Care, and we've been doing it to the point where throughout COVID, actually the government came to us, the provincial government came to us and said, we can't feed the people in the city. We want you to, and here's some money to be able to do that. And we were ended up feeding, in the neighborhood of, I was like 50,000 people meals, or 50,000 meals that went out in a period of 3 months, and going, okay, that's our job. That's what we're supposed to do.
And you guys have teamed up with the food bank on this and different organizations as well, right?
Yeah, we partner with the food bank, and we partner with a number of other organizations in the community. A lot of them, we're all on the same team, so it's not just us doing it, but I think coming alongside a lot of these agencies that are doing the work. We're not trying to replace anybody. We're just coming alongside and doing the work and helping out where they need. And a lot of the agencies in the community just don't have the volunteer base that they used to, and are missing that. So we've stepped up and said, okay, we want to send volunteers to help out and do whatever we can to meet the needs, whatever the need is in the community. Let's take our job, let's do it. And as a church, if we can meet the felt needs, it's amazing how people open up and are ready to hear the gospel. And we've seen a lot of salvations. A lot of people come to Christ because we fed them, we fed their family, or we clothed them, or we helped them in one way or another, and all of a sudden they're open to the gospel.
And what kind of feedback have you been getting from the community about this? It sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, the feedback's been incredible, and a lot of times the initial feedback is, quite honestly, is like, are you associated with a church? Are you a church? We named it My City Care because we didn't want to attach it to a church or to our church. And so when people find out it's attached to a church, then their initial reaction is, okay, what do you want? And we're like, we don't have any strings attached. We're just wanting to meet needs and not having any expectations
Yeah, no
of
agenda.
that. And I think a lot of times the initial reaction is sometimes negative when they find out it's attached to a church. But then when they see that there are no strings attached and that we're really helping it, the feedback's been very, very positive. Uh, you know, from the individuals we're helping, the agencies we're partnering with, the municipality, like the municipal government, the provincial government, and even we've had the federal government make comments and different things too. So it's been, the response has been overwhelming. It's been really good.
Yeah, it's interesting that they would think that there was an agenda attached to that. It's funny that you say that. So I know that, with some, the tendency is for churches to stay within their four walls rather than going out to connect with their neighbors. But so what advice would you have for church leaders to perhaps overcome those fears or mindsets that would stop them from doing this?
Well, I think, COVID and all of the, things being shut down, and I think it's caused us as pastors, as leaders, to really reevaluate church. And when we're not able to have a weekend service, I think it caused us to reevaluate and going, okay, have we overemphasized the weekend gathering and underemphasized what we do throughout the week? And I think it's caused us to reevaluate as pastors and leaders to go, is the church a place to attend, or are we the church? And I think I'd challenge every pastor and leader and churchgoer to go, hey, church is not just a place we go to. It's not a building that we attend. It's not a service one day a week. We're called to be the church. Jesus called us to be the church. And part of that activity of being the church is to be the hands and feet of Jesus to our community. And we're not called to minister to people and expect them to come to us. Jesus said go, and he told us to go to them. And I think that'd be my challenge, is like, I think this is the best way we can go is back in the day, we went with tracts and we knocked on doors and we invited people to respond to the gospel. And that doesn't work anymore in today's society. And I think it probably repulses more than it actually helps. But I think going and being the hands and feet of Jesus and ministering to needs and meeting needs like Jesus told us in Matthew 25, I think is the most effective way. And I'd encourage all the churches to be involved. And we have a vision. We've been partnering with the church in Medicine Hat, for instance. That's not our church. They just said, hey, could we do that here? We're like, yes. And we've been partnering with them. And My City Care has been set up in Medicine Hat, and it has no attachment to our church. It's another church doing it. And we want to help other churches do that as well. Just as, like, where do we start? Well, we have a plan. Let's partner and let's see if we can't activate the church to be the hands and feet of Jesus in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense because it's not a competition like your church versus their church. Like you said, it's all one, right? So, I mean, I wonder
Yeah.
if maybe churchgoers need to find things in common too with people in the community. So, like, for example, most of us can relate to kids and family. Can churches maybe offer free childcare or some kind of after school kids club, something like that?
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Whatever the felt need is in your community, wherever your church is located, there are needs there that are being unmet. And if we just had eyes to see it, just and ears to hear, and go out there and say, what is that need? If it's childcare, that's a great idea, right? And meeting, parents that can't afford, daycare, or can't afford, full day, and the kids are done school. What do they still can't come home from work? What do we do? Well, we can after school care, whatever it might be. There's great, whatever the need is, and you find multiple people that have that need, then I think it's important to meet it.
hmm What about people that don't feel comfortable coming to church? Like, say somebody's divorced, they might feel they are not welcome there, for example. So, is there a place for the church to offer to help people going through tough situations like this?
Again, Jesus said go, and so we've set up a separate office downtown, my city care, and for people just like that who might not be comfortable to come through a church doors. We've had people walk through our doors to get help, and they come in terrified and thinking lightning's going to strike if they walk through the doors, which of course we know that's not going to happen, and Jesus accepts everybody. But I find it a lot easier to set up that separate office, something where people, and we meet a lot of people there who would not be comfortable to step into a church as of yet, and maybe because of past hurts or past experiences, or where they feel like they're going to be judged, or their own guilt or shame, that they feel like nobody else is going to love on them, and they're surprised when we do. I think Jesus he went to Zacchaeus' house because Zacchaeus didn't feel comfortable to go to the synagogue, because he felt he was going to be judged. And Jesus met the adulterous woman on the street because, again, she was being judged in there, so, or felt like she was going to be judged as well. But I think as a church, like, we got to find ways that we can go. There's multiple ways that we can go without and minister to the people that we might not necessarily reach
hmm
on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, like, well, let me ask you this, Pastor Kelly. So, of course, some people might think church people are too judgy against certain marginalized members of society. Can you offer maybe any advice on how you can help or welcome people if they're part of LGBTQ community or a family member of someone who's in that group who's maybe struggling?
Well, we're getting into yeah, we're getting into very touchy things, because honestly, I mean, the church has been very judgy in many ways, and I think we got to be careful about who we're judging. And again, we got to take our cue from Jesus. We're the body of Christ, and take our cue from Jesus. And how Jesus ministered is he ministered. John said this in John 1, that he ministered with grace and truth. But it's interesting to me that who he ministered grace to, where he gave grace and where he gave truth. And he gave a lot of grace to the marginalized, to the outcast, to, at the time, of his time, the LGBT community were the tax collectors. There were sinners, and then there was tax collectors. They weren't even good enough to be listed with the sinners. They were another level of outcast. And yet Jesus went to Matthew and said, follow me. And he went and had a meal with Zacchaeus, and he went out of his way to welcome and offer grace, where the church was offering, at that time, the Pharisees in the synagogue, and the church was offering judgment, and he offered grace. But then to the church leaders, who should have known better and were preaching the gospel, then he spoke very strong words of truth. And so I think we need, as a church, take our cue from Jesus and offer grace, and throw out the welcome mat, and love everybody regardless of where they're at, and just believe that a relationship with Jesus is going to bring life change, and it can bring hope, and bring life change. And that's not our job to judge. The Holy Spirit is the convictor, not us. So I think we need to do whatever we possibly can to offer grace and welcome anybody and everybody where they're at, and make sure that our churches are doing the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right about that because I know the stats are high for people, certain groups leaving the church because they feel not welcomed or not loved or not judged. So I think it's important to show these people how much love they actually do deserve. as well, and that to remind them how much God loves them. Absolutely. So I know I have a lot of questions to get through here, but we're running out of time, unfortunately, Pastor Kelly. It's always so interesting and enlightening to talk to you. But thank you so much, Pastor Kelly, for being with us today. Appreciated.
Thanks so much. My pleasure, Janet.
Kelly Stickel is the lead pastor of My Victory in Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.